In July 1980, a man's body was discovered just off Interstate 5, south of Woodburn, Oregon, with no identification and few clues to his identity. The victim was labeled as John Doe. Law enforcement had been alerted by a tip, prompting a swift response from authorities. The scene, located in a relatively remote area of Marion County, suggested that the body had been intentionally left out of public view. As the investigation began, detectives were immediately challenged by the lack of identifying information. There were no documents, no ID, and the state of the body offered little to go on. A forensic examination uncovered troubling details. The man had been drugged, indecently assaulted, and strangled. It painted a harrowing picture of his final moments. Compounding the horror, investigators discovered that another body had been found just a day earlier in the same area. The proximity and similarities in how the bodies were disposed of raised the possibility of a serial offender. Yet without knowing who the victims were, it was nearly impossible to make meaningful connections or build a profile of a suspect. The case eventually went cold. With time, evidence deteriorated, leads disappeared, and the public's attention faded. The unidentified man remained nameless, and the case was shelved, like so many others. Then, in January 2024, years after the discovery, an investigator from the Orange County Sheriff's Department reached out to the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit with a new possibility. They offered specialized help using forensic investigative genetic genealogy. A blood sample from the original case was still preserved and was sent to Parabon Nanolabs. There, scientists developed a detailed genetic profile using technology that didn't exist at the time of the initial investigation. With the new profile, the team began tracing the victim's family tree, identifying potential relatives through shared DNA. Several family members were contacted and agreed to submit their own DNA for comparison. The results confirmed the identity of the man once known only as John Doe. He was Larry Eugene Parks. His family hadn't heard from him since 1979, the year before his body was discovered in Oregon. They revealed that he was last seen alive in Pensacola, Florida. After that, all contact ceased. Larry had been born in 1950. He briefly attended college, but dropped out, which led to his being drafted into the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. His military training took him through Fort Hamilton, Fort Dix, and Fort Riley before he was deployed to Saigon, at the heart of the conflict. The experience would leave a lasting mark on him. Now that Larry's identity has been confirmed, investigators are focusing on who was responsible for his death. In May 2025, they identified a suspect in the decades-old case, Randy Kraft, also known as the Scorecard Killer. Currently in his late 70s and incarcerated at San Quentin State Prison, Kraft has a dark and violent past. He was convicted in 1989 for the murders of 16 young men, though authorities believe the actual number of his victims exceeds 60, spanning several states. His pattern was chillingly consistent. He targeted young, often transient men, many of them hitchhikers, offering rides or companionship before drugging, assaulting, and killing them. The disturbing parallels between Kraft's known crimes and Larry Parks' death have led investigators to name him as the sole person of interest. While identifying the victim after 45 years brings a sense of closure to part of the case, the quest for full justice continues. Larry was last seen in Pensacola, Florida, in 1979, his disappearance fitting the victim profile that Randy Kraft had historically pursued. The circumstances of Larry's death closely mirrored Kraft's established methods: the use of substances, indecent assault, and strangulation. Kraft's crimes were concentrated along the West Coast, particularly in California and Oregon, overlapping directly with the location where Larry's body was found. The fact that Larry was discovered near Interstate 5, a route frequently used by Kraft, further deepens investigators' suspicions. Moreover, Kraft's known tactic of discarding victims in remote or hidden areas without identification matches the anonymous state in which Larry's body was found, making it harder for law enforcement to connect the dots at the time. Though Kraft has not been formally charged in connection with Larry's death, the parallels are compelling enough that authorities consider him a major lead. Investigators are now reanalyzing old evidence with modern forensic technology, hoping that advancements might extract data previously unavailable. As Kraft, now 80 years old, continues to serve a life sentence at San Quentin State Prison, the renewed focus on his potential link to Larry's case offers a sliver of long-awaited hope. Authorities remain committed to confirming the connection and, if possible, formally tying Kraft to the murder. In May 1985, a passerby in Utah made a chilling discovery: the lifeless body of a young woman. For nearly 4 decades, the mystery of her death remained unsolved, leaving her family with nothing but grief and unanswered questions. The victim was 18-year-old Christine Gallegos, born in 1967 and living in Kearns, Utah at the time. She was engaged to a man named Troy, and the couple was looking forward to their future together. On the night of May 15, 1985, Christine was last seen hitchhiking to work along 4000 West in Salt Lake City around 10:30 p.m. the next morning. On May 16, a passerby noticed something unusual near 1384 South Jefferson Street. not far from the old Dirks field. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was a body and immediately contacted authorities. Police arrived quickly, secured the area, and launched a full-scale investigation. Christine had been brutally attacked. She was beaten, indecently assaulted, stabbed, and ultimately shot. Evidence at the scene suggested she had fought fiercely against her attacker but was tragically overpowered. Investigators canvassed the area and interviewed anyone who might have seen Christine the night before. Despite their extensive efforts and multiple rounds of forensic testing conducted by the Utah Bureau of Forensic Services and Sorensen Forensics, no viable leads emerged. As the years passed and the trail grew colder, the case slipped into the category of unresolved. In 2023, nearly 40 years later, Christine's case was revived with the support of Utah's Cold Case Review Board and the Utah State Crime Lab. Investigators focused their attention on an unidentified male DNA profile that had been entered into the Combined DNA Index System CODIS. The hope was that, with today's advanced forensic technology, they could finally identify the person responsible for Christine's murder and bring long-overdue justice to her family. In late 2023, thanks to technological advances that hadn't been available during the original investigation, detectives took a new approach to solving Christine Gallego's decades-old case. With support from the Utah Department of Public Safety's State Bureau of Investigation and funding from the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative grant, preserved evidence was re-examined. This time, investigators turned to investigative genetic genealogy, an innovative method that merges advanced DNA testing with genealogical research to identify unknown suspects. The breakthrough came in May 2025. The analysis identified Ricky Lee Stallworth as a likely suspect in Christine's murder. To confirm this lead, investigators obtained a voluntary DNA sample from a member of Stallworth's family. The result was a definitive match to the unknown male DNA profile collected at the original crime scene. At the time of Christine's murder in 1985, Stallworth had been a 27-year-old airman stationed at Hill Air Force Base, but any possibility of interviewing or charging him ended when investigators discovered that Stallworth had died of natural causes in July 2023, just months before he was identified as a suspect. One of the lingering questions in the case is whether Christine had any connection to Stallworth. Throughout both the original and renewed investigations, no evidence was found to suggest they knew each other. Her family and friends had never heard his name, and no direct links were discovered. This unresolved aspect leaves open the question of how their paths may have crossed on the night Christine was killed. Following the resolution of the case, the Utah State Bureau of Investigation released a statement, affirming their commitment to victim-centered justice in the pursuit of accountability, even when arrests are no longer possible. The statement read, "Handcuffs, however, do not equal healing. While Stallworth can no longer be held legally accountable, identifying him after so many years represents a step toward long-overdue justice and answers." Christine's family was formally notified of the case's resolution. Though the news could never erase the pain of her loss, it brought long-awaited closure. Her mother, Leah, expressed deep gratitude to the investigators for never giving up on her daughter's case. Overcome with emotion, she said, "I did not know I was going to speak. I just know that I sure miss this girl every day. I wonder about the kids that she would have, and I watch other people with their daughters, their grandkids." In another cold case from the 1970s, tragedy struck in Boulder, Colorado, when a young gas station attendant was found fatally stabbed. For decades, the case remained unsolved, despite early suspicions. The victim was 20-year-old John Curtis Patterson, born on May 16, 1955. He was the youngest of 7 children and grew up in a loving, supportive household. In the spring of 1975, John was attending Ohio University, still uncertain of his future, when he was rocked by the death of his mother. Overwhelmed by grief, he made the difficult decision to leave school in search of a fresh start. That decision led him to Colorado, where he hoped to rebuild. He found work at the Cascade Service, the station located in the 4500 block of North Broadway in Boulder. Despite the recent upheavals in his life, John appeared to be on a path to stability, unaware that danger was ahead. On September 29, 1975, what began as an ordinary day at the gas station took a devastating turn. Customers inside the station became alarmed when they heard strange noises coming from the restroom described as the sound of someone vomiting. When they investigated, they were met with a horrifying sight. John was found bound, bleeding, and vomiting blood. The witnesses immediately contacted authorities. The Boulder County Sheriff's Office arrived quickly and discovered that John had died in the station restroom. He had suffered a fatal stab wound to the chest. Working as a clerk at the time, John had been brutally attacked during his shift. The senseless nature of the crime and the vulnerability of the young victim shocked the community. Though detectives began an investigation immediately, and there was an early suspect, no charges were ever filed. As time passed, the case gradually faded into the background, joining the ranks of other unresolved tragedies. But like Christine's story, John's case remains a symbol of how even decades-old mysteries can one day find resolution through persistence, evolving science, and an unwavering commitment to justice. As investigators began piecing together the events surrounding John Curtis Patterson's death, signs quickly pointed to robbery as a possible motive. The cash drawer at the gas station had been left open, suggesting that money may have been taken during the attack. Near John's body in the restroom, officers also discovered 2 unfired .30 caliber cartridges. Forensic analysis showed that the cartridges bore extractor marks and light primer strikes, clear indicators that someone had attempted to fire a weapon but failed during the assault. Attention soon turned to 32-year-old Louis Jess Lucero, a man with a lengthy criminal history that included arrests for robbery, burglary, drug offenses, and weapons violations. Lucero had been staying at a nearby motel, also located in the 4500 block of North Broadway, just steps from the crime scene. The close proximity raised immediate red flags, and detectives launched a deeper investigation into his possible involvement. A search of Lucero's motel room uncovered critical evidence. Among the items recovered were a .30 caliber M1 carbine, rifle, and a knife that matched the fatal wound inflicted on John. Forensic testing further strengthened the case. Fibers from John's shirt were found on both the knife and its sheath, while hairs recovered from Lucero's boots matched those from John's head. This physical evidence strongly linked Lucero to both the victim and the crime scene. Despite the compelling findings, the case took an unexpected and frustrating turn. Lucero was interviewed by investigators and initially arrested in 1975, but, for reasons that remain unclear, he was released before formal charges were filed. This decision left the case unresolved, though Boulder County Sheriff's detectives continued to pursue leads for decades, determined to one day bring justice for John. It wasn't until the advent of new forensic technology that the investigation saw renewed progress. Using the ballistics IQ device, detectives were able to make a crucial link. The 2 unfired .30 caliber cartridges found at the crime scene had been chambered in the same firearm recovered from Lucero's motel room, his M1 carbine. This revelation offered modern scientific confirmation of a connection investigators had long suspected. To solidify the results, the evidence was sent to Evidence IQ, the company behind the ballistics IQ device. Their ballistics experts confirmed that the cartridges and the firearm were indeed a match. This breakthrough added strong forensic backing to the body of physical evidence already collected. Still, some aspects of the case remain unresolved. No eyewitness directly observed the crime, and a few unanswered questions linger. However, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office publicly stated that they had overwhelming evidence indicating that Lucero was responsible for both the robbery and John's death. This conclusion was based on the combined weight of forensic results, circumstantial details, and Lucero's known presence in the immediate area. Tragically, any chance of legal accountability came to an end when Louis Jess Lucero passed away in 2024, nearly 50 years after John lost his life. In the aftermath of Lucero's death, the Boulder County District Attorney's Office conducted a final review of the case. In May 2025, they concluded there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Lucero had committed the crime. While the finding could not lead to a trial, it allowed the case to be officially closed. District Attorney Michael Doherty acknowledged the pain of the unresolved decades but emphasized the importance of this final determination. He stated that if Lucero had still been alive, formal charges would have been filed. Though justice in court was no longer possible, the truth had finally come to light, bringing long-awaited closure to a case that had haunted a community for nearly half a century. The evidence against Louis Jess Lucero was overwhelming, and had he been alive, charges would have been filed without hesitation. Though justice was delayed by nearly 5 decades, the resolution brought a long-awaited sense of closure to John Curtis Patterson's unsolved case. For law enforcement, it stood as a powerful reminder of the value of persistence and the impact of evolving forensic technology in solving cold cases. In a public statement, Detective Don Dillard highlighted the department's commitment to these investigations, saying, "This is why the Boulder County Sheriff's Office spends time investigating cold cases like this, to see if something was missed, and to determine whether new technology can uncover new leads." The Sheriff's Office also made it clear that families of cold case victims are never forgotten. District Attorney Michael Doherty echoed that commitment, stating, "In our jurisdiction, we work very closely with law enforcement to secure justice for victims in our community." As this investigation by the Sheriff's Department demonstrates, the quest for justice is something we will always pursue. I am very grateful to the Sheriff's Office for continuing to investigate this tragic case and for using new technology to provide answers for the victim's family and our community. Our office reviewed this investigation, and with this new evidence, we would have been able to file charges in this case. John's siblings released a statement as well, expressing their deep appreciation for the renewed efforts, especially by Detective Dillard. "After so many years, we finally have the long-awaited answers and a sense of justice our family has hoped for," they wrote. In another haunting case, one that would also be brought back to life by modern science, workers in San Jose, California made a disturbing discovery in July 1981. On the morning of July 11th, while working along the train tracks on Mulberry Road, now part of the Berriesabat station parking lot, they noticed something unusual in the grass. Wrapped in plastic and lying still in the open field was an object that caught their attention. As they approached cautiously, they made a horrific discovery: the decomposing torso of a woman. Law enforcement was immediately contacted. San Jose Police Department detectives arrived at the scene and were met with a deeply unsettling sight. The body was missing its head, arms, and legs. The torso bore multiple stab wounds to the chest, revealing the viciousness of the attack. The perpetrator had gone to great lengths to conceal the victim's identity, dismembering her and leaving the remains in a secluded location. Adding to the mystery, 2 religious pendants were found with the body. Whether these items were intended as clues, symbols, or part of a ritual remained unclear. With no identifiable features and no leads from the surrounding area, the victim's identity remained a mystery. Investigators combed through missing persons reports, interviewed possible witnesses, and ran the available forensic tests of the time, but the case remained unsolved. Eventually, with no viable path forward, the case went cold. In 2023, over 40 years later, advances in DNA technology would finally offer a new opportunity to revisit the case. Investigators launched a renewed effort, hopeful that today's scientific tools might uncover the identity of the woman long lost to time. The decades-old mystery of the unidentified woman found in a San Jose field in 1981 began to unravel in 2023, when the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office partnered with forensic genealogists at Parabon Nanolabs using advanced DNA technology combined with genealogical analysis. Parabon examined the limited biological evidence that had been preserved from the crime scene. That same year, their research produced a compelling lead: the unidentified victim could be Vivian Moss. Following this breakthrough, investigators began tracing possible family members of Vivian. In 2024, they located and spoke with her granddaughter, who shared a memory that had stayed with her since childhood. She recalled a moment from the early 1980s when her grandmother had promised to pick her up for an overnight visit but never arrived. That night marked the last time anyone in the family ever heard from Vivian Moss.